Ansible is this really powerful tool that we're going to create elaborate playbooks that configure entire systems and do all sorts of strings of things. But what's really nice is that it can also be a very simple but powerful ad hoc tool, meaning we can run commands from the command line and have them perform on all of our client machines. It's really awesome. We can do things like install packages and make sure services start on boot. We do have to be aware of privilege escalation, which seems like something we've already talked about and set up, but this one had me stumped for a little while. Like, why on earth isn't it giving me permission on the remote server? So I do want to mention this as we talk. But first of all, let's talk about what sorts of commands we can run remotely on our systems now that Ansible is installed and running. As we were setting things up, we actually did already run a couple ad hoc commands, but now we're going to do it with purpose and kind of figure out what's happening. If we type something like Ansible, and we say what computers we want to have this work on, I'm going to say all, so all three of our client computers over here, Ubuntu, CentOS, and the repo server. So Ubuntu or Ansible all, and -A for action, and I'm going to put that in single quotes so that it quotes it out, and I'm going to say I want it to run the command uptime. Press enter, and we should get a response back from all three of the computers with the uptime. So it's been running 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute. So it just started updating. And if you're doing this lab 2 and you do something similar, that's probably the uptime you're going to get as well, because we just started this lab up. So we can do things like that, but here is the problem. If we start doing things that require administrator access, of course we have sudo set up on each one of these computers, but by default Ansible in the ad hoc mode is not going to elevate privilege. We can demonstrate this by typing Ansible all -A for what action we want to do, who am I? All right, and we press enter, it's going to return the results of the who am I command, and you're going to see nugget 1, administrator, and nugget 1. That's because it has not escalated privilege when it tries to execute whatever actions we tell it to. So the command in here is performing or is executing as the regular user that we go over and connect with. So if we want to use escalated privilege, if we're going to do things that require more access than our individual login users need, we use the -B or become. So say Ansible all -B for become, like become sudo user or become another user, -A, who am I? Now we should get root as everyone, because we've become the sudo user or the root user before we performed the action in this thing here. So that's really important to know, because if you don't use this -B command in your ad hoc commands where we just type Ansible on the command line and make it happen, it's not going to escalate privilege, and we're going to run into some frustrating results. Now, when we do things like this, it's just running the command on each local computer. Whether it's uptime or who am I, we can say Ansible all -A ls, and it's going to give us what's in the home directory of each user. So this is in the nugget 1 user, this is in the administrator user, this is in the nugget 1 user. It's going to show us the commands. It's just running that command remotely. But Ansible does more than just run remote commands. It actually uses modules to perform a whole bunch of different actions. Now, modules can be thought of kind of like different tools. So over here we have Martha. She's our handy woman, and she has the ability to perform a bunch of different tasks because she has many different tools. She has a pencil up here, she has a hammer here, she has a wrench, or if you're over in Europe, it's a spanner, I think is the proper term. She has a drill, she has a mysterious tool inside this hidden pouch here, but basically she can do many different things depending on what module you specify. For example, if you wanted her to hammer in a nail, you would say, Martha, grab your hammer and pound in a nail. If you want her to push a button, you probably wouldn't specify a tool. You would say, Martha, push the button. And if you don't specify what tool for her to use, she's probably going to use her finger, and she's going to push that button. Ansible works a little bit like that, but instead of defaulting to a finger, it defaults to the command module. So command is actually a module, just like all the other modules we're going to look at. However, if you don't specify a module on the ad hoc command line, it assumes that you want the command module. That's important to know, because in the example that we just did, we left out telling Ansible what module to use. And since we did that, it picked the command. But what other sorts of modules can we use in Ansible? Well, there's a whole bunch of them. We're going to cover a couple in this nugget and a couple more as we go on, but there are literally hundreds of modules that you can check out on the Ansible docs page. You can see all the various modules that exist, but we're going to use a few of the more common modules, and we're going to perform some actions. Today we're going to do it in ad hoc mode. Now that command module is just another module. So Ansible -m command is the same as if we don't put -m command, but I'm going to say command, and then the action I want the command module to take is reboot. Now, if we press enter, the command module is going to give us errors. Now, why do we have errors? If you remember, it doesn't escalate privilege by default. So it's going to say you don't have access to that, permission denied, or no such file or directory, because for a regular user, the reboot command is not even in the path. On CentOS, there's no such file or directory. Here, you didn't have permission. The user did not have permission to restart it. Now, we could say Ansible all. I'm going to leave the -m command off because that it's implied if we don't say it. But I do want to be root, or I want to have escalated privilege. So I'm going to say -b and then -a. The command I want is shutdown -r. Now what this is going to do is it's going to schedule a shutdown for a minute. Right? In a minute it's going to shut down. And it says, okay, shutdown is scheduled for this at 58. If we type date, that is in a minute, right? So we don't have much time now, but it says if we do shutdown -c, it'll cancel the shutdown process, or the reboot process, because I did shutdown -r. I don't actually want them all to reboot, so let's quickly say, got to be really quick, Ansible all -b -a shutdown -c. Press enter. Boom, success. We successfully canceled that shutdown. However, if I would not have put -b, we would not have had the sudo privilege. We would not have been able to shut down the scheduled shutdown that we had done. So we didn't shut it down. We made it in time. We managed to defuse the restart bomb that was going to take place. I do want to show you. I didn't have time to talk because we didn't have much time. But this warning, this is actually just one of the computers. Ubuntu spewed out this warning that it was sending to all of the logged in users, including root at the time, because it was logged in as root or as the Nugget1 user sudoing to root. And just a warning: the system is going to go down for reboot at this time. So it just showed us that this was the junk that it also heard back when it executed a command. Notice it's not red. It's not like there's an error. It's just giving us information about what was responded with the computer. So anyway, we successfully did that because we escalated privilege. But this is all still the command module. I want to talk about some other modules. For example, what if we wanted to install a package on our servers? Let's say Ansible all -b, because we're going to have to escalate privilege if we want to install packages, -m, the apt module, and what I want to install is the action I want to install. The name of the package equals Apache 2, and the state I want is present. I want to make sure that Apache 2 is present. I'm going to press enter, and we're going to get an error from CentOS because, one, it doesn't have the apt program, right? There is no apt on CentOS. So the CentOS machine gave us an error saying, I don't have apt-get update. I can't install this. There's no such program as apt-get. However, on the repo server, we got a success. It said it did make a change on the system, and there was a success, though. And then down here, if we look, there was a success on the Ubuntu machine. If we run the same program again, CentOS will give us another error. However, this time we just get a little response saying there was nothing changed, so there was no change because it was already installed. All right, so there was a success making sure that it was present, but there was no change made. So it's green because it was successful, but no changes were made. It went much quicker that time. So we can do that. We can also do that with yum. There's a yum module as well. Ansible all -b -m yum. The action we want it to take. This format is the same. Name equals, however, it's not called Apache 2, is it? It's called HTTPD. And we want that state to be, we could say present, we could say absent if we want to remove it, or we could say latest. What latest will do is not only will it install it if it's not there, but it will update it if it's there with an older version. Okay, so I'm going to say I want the latest version installed on, I'm going to say all, so we should expect 2 errors from Ubuntu and repo because they already, or they don't have yum installed, right? They're going to say, I don't have yum, so I'm going to error out. Plus, they don't have a package named HTTPD. Anyway, CentOS succeeded. There were no changes made because on CentOS, Apache was already installed and up to date. So there were no changes that were made. However, this program made sure that that was the case. Now we could also remove a package with it. So let's say Ansible. Let's remove it for just one repo, -b, because we have to be root, -m, the apt module, and the action I want it to take is the name of Apache 2. I want the state to be absent. So it's only going to try to run it on repo. All right, and did we get a success? It said success. There were changes made. If we run it again, we should get another success without any changes made. And sure enough, there were no changes, but it succeeded. So we know that, yeah, Apache 2 is no longer installed on there. And I want to show you one more module that has to do with packages like this. If we were to do Ansible all -b -m service -a for the action we want it to take, the name equals Apache 2, and we want enabled to equal true. Now this is saying that a service, meaning the Apache 2 service, we want it to be enabled on boot. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's enabled on boot on all of our servers. If we press enter, you should be able to predict what's going to happen. On CentOS it failed. Why? Because there is no package called Apache 2 on CentOS. Up here, we got a success, changed false. It was already enabled Apache 2. And up here, on repo, it says that there were no changes made. It was already enabled. However, this is kind of misleading because we know Apache is not installed on the repo server. We just deleted it, right? We just deleted it up here with the Ansible apt module. So it's not installed. However, the Ansible program went through all the processes of enabling it, meaning there are symbolic links to make sure that it will start up. The problem is it's not going to start up because it's not installed. So sometimes you have to be able, or you have to make sure that you know what state your system is in. You have to make sure you know that Apache 2 is installed, for example, because the service module may not always check to make sure that the service exists. It'll just enable the service even though it's not there to actually start up. One last thing we can do with the service command, we can make sure it's enabled, but we can also restart a service. So we can say Ansible all -b -m service -a name equals Apache 2 state equals started. All right. Now we're going to get an error from CentOS because there is no package called Apache 2, right? So CentOS is going to fail. It's saying, I don't have Apache 2. There's no such thing. In this case, repo failed because while it had all the right stuff to enable it on boot up, it was unable to start it because there was no service to actually start. It tried, but it didn't make any changes, and it failed because Apache was not installed. So this time the service command was able to tell us that there was a failure because it could not start it. Up here we see this is green, so as expected the name Apache 2 was already started. It didn't have to change anything because it was already started. We had a success. Now, I know I threw a lot of information at you in a very short amount of time, especially concerning the packages and services modules, because it's different whether you're running CentOS or you're running Ubuntu, because it's different package modules. One is apt, one is yum. The service module is the same on both. However, the package name might be different. So there's always going to be some gotchas. We will cover those in later nuggets with some logic on how to determine what a system is using facts about the system. But in ad hoc mode, we're kind of limited in what we're able to do on the command line. That doesn't mean ad hoc mode isn't awesome, because we can run commands on multiple computers in one shot, as long as you remember about that privilege escalation Interaction with the -B for become the sudo user. Anyway, the ad hoc system is powerful with some serious limitations, but I don't want you to think that this is just a stripped down version of Ansible. It's a full-blown, very useful tool that we can use in order to interact with the system. So once we learn this, we're going to learn more complicated things like I mentioned with playbooks. However, the ad hoc system is awesome to know about, and it's useful, especially in one-off situations. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.